You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear.
Sandi Mines, thanks for joining me on this really important Shoe and Show episode, because you and I have recently come back from Detroit, where the Black Footwear Forum national event took place, and it was phenomenal in so many ways. But I learned something really important. Every event, whether it's a conference or a seminar or a workshop or whatever, every event needs that resident clapper, that guy or gal who hears something that's really important said, and maybe the audience isn't picking up what the speaker's laying down necessarily, but you need that one person to clap and get the audience going and have them respond appropriately to salient points, important tidbits, impassioned pleas, whatever the case may be when it comes to kind of someone's stage presence. And I learned from a pro that our next guest is one of those people, among many other things. He is an entrepreneur and a Renaissance man, but I'll let you introduce our guest today.
Great. I'm really excited about having this guest on today. Sean Williams is our guest for today's Shoe and Show podcast, and he is the engagement manager for Pensole Lewis College. And we're really excited to have Sean on today. First, I'd like to say welcome and start out by having Sean tell a little bit about his shoe story, how he entered the footwear market personally, what were his first impressions maybe of the footwear industry, and how it came to be, and how you met Dwayne and how you joined Pensole and all of that. So Sean, welcome, and tell us a little bit about your shoe story.
Hey, Sandi, how you doing? Matt, how you doing? Glad to be here on Shoe In, and thank you for that introduction. For me, footwear goes back to the age of 13, growing up in Brooklyn. So we're talking, at about to be 51 in December, 37 plus years of me being in love with sneakers. So really growing up as a kid in Brooklyn, New York, while hip hop was growing to the multi-billion-dollar behemoth that it became now, there was no real such thing as sneaker culture for us. It was really just about making sure that you had dope sneakers on your feet to complete your outfit, or even to have the right pair of sneakers on for whatever utility as part of your hip hop experience. So, what I mean when I say that is, if you were a graffiti artist, you wore certain kinds of shoes, because going to train yards and painting in certain spaces required sort of like that all-terrain kind of grip, right? If you were a DJ or an MC, and that required you being on your feet for comfort, if you were a b-boy, which had, heavy dance requirements, you looked for shoes that kind of gave you some flexibility and lightweight performance. We were kind of really the true, tech testers for footwear back then without realizing it, because these were the kind of things we were paying attention to as part of our urban experience in the culture. So really my mom, God bless, her passing on, 12 years ago now, she really kickstarted my fixation with sneakers, because I was in love with them. And as long as my grades were right, she would get me any sneaker I wanted. So as long as I asked for something and the grades were in line with what I was asking for, those shoes were on my feet. And, we're talking about from 13 now to going up to I'm 15, 16 years old now, and I'm starting to work and make my own money. I'm buying my own shoes, and she's still living up to her deal and buying me shoes. So I'm accumulating sneakers at a pace a little faster than the average kid. And it just really blossomed and stayed, growing at this, mushroom cloud kind of pace for me with footwear. So I've always been into the stories related to each sneaker. I believe sneakers represent a story in every box. Again, as growing up as part of someone in New York City, with hip hop becoming what it became, there are those stories that are tied to a lot of shoes. I was around for those years with the iconic Run DMC Madison Square Garden concert where they asked everybody to, hold their shell toe Adidas in the air, which led to them getting the first non-athletic endorsement deal. You know, if Adidas is there and Run DMC asks people to put their shoes in the air and five people put their shoes in the air, we don't have the history making moment that became, right? But we were all that they were representing an experience for all of us out in the five boroughs and surrounding tri-state area in New York City. You kind of have to know what the end result is going to be of asking people in the crowd to do something like that.
Yeah.
So, you do something like that and you don't get the desired result. Adidas is like, no, I don't think this is what we thought it was.
Sean, is that the moment in history where, if you had to pick a moment in history where sneaker culture and hip hop culture kind of converged into these two forces that made an even stronger force? Is that it? Was it before that? Is it sometime after?
Well, I say quite the contrary in that I'm of the train of thought, and I even teach this through my social studies program. Sneaker culture and hip hop culture are the same. As much as the sneaker business has become the lucrative juggernaut that it has become, and hip hop separately, one came out of the other. Sneakers were chosen to be the official footwear for the hip hop movement because they represented anti-establishment. When you think about the 60s and the 70s, how many places you couldn't go or get access to because you were wearing sneakers? We all wear sneakers to work now, but 50 years ago, you showed up to work with sneakers on, you weren't getting paid for the day.
Yeah, that's a great point.
You couldn't get into churches. You couldn't get into certain clubs and restaurants. You were really looked at as less than for someone who showed up wearing sneakers. And the hip hop movement, upon its creation in the late 60s, early 70s, spoke to that marginalization and anti establishment. That's why sneakers were chosen to be part of the hip hop movement. So I never separate the two because sneakers were there from the beginning because of that point. And yes, it's a $100 billion global business now, which has its own life. But I'm one of the people who, because of my personal journey and relationship to them, will never separate the two. I'll acknowledge that there is a culture that's there because there are parallels between what hip hop culture is and what sneaker culture is. The rules that govern sneaker culture are a lot of them are hip hop culture rules. So I will acknowledge that birth into what it has become, but I personally will never separate the two. And it's convenient to do that just for the sake of doing business, but in all actuality, the two are one and the same in my personal existence. So that's how I see that. And you fast forward, to let's just say the early 2000s, you start talking about the Jordan retros that come out, and you start talking about brands starting to revisit, what's in their catalog and inventory from the past, and that starts to create the nostalgia and the hype and the urban folklore that led to what our modern day sneaker culture is. And then you really throw in reselling on top of that, and it really pushes it to another level, especially when you look at how much money reselling makes now, as a subsegment of the market. But the evolution of it all is really the birth of it for me has always been hip hop culture.
Interesting. I noticed at the Black Footwear Forum that big event just celebrated culture and community in such a positive light. When I first arrived, I really did notice that it was much of a reunion of sort, and I know they were calling it the reunion, and I was like, wow, I just feel like I'm at a Nike and Jordan reunion. But when I sat down and listened to the panels and the women talking about how everyone's so supportive and you could stand on my shoulders and what the future looks like, and celebrating Pensole, tell us a little bit about what Pensole means to you and what the future of Pensole holds, and tell us a little bit about that from your eyes.
So me, I have a very unique story about my beginnings with Pensole as Pensole Footwear Design Academy and now Pensole Lewis College of Business and Design. I like to call myself unofficially one of Pensole's like employee number zeros. Myself and D. Wells, who was my partner in Obsessive Sneaker Disorder and Social Studies, we have been friends with Dwayne for a very long time. And while he was still with Nike and Jordan, and really seeing what his frustrations were with what the next generation of talent looked like and where it was coming from, he was doing things like the Nike Future Soul competition, with Nike and Jordan. And those kids were winning those competitions and their shoes were actually being produced. These were things that were unheard of 15 years ago, right? And, you see him take that to the next level where he says, you know what, I'm going to bet on myself and I'm starting Pensole Footwear Design Academy and I'm taking that leap, and we supported him every step of the way on that because we did the same thing when we jumped out the window in 2007 and created the OSD talk show. People told us no one's going to listen to you guys talk about sneakers. Literally told us that. And now it's a multi-million dollar subsegment of an industry that, unfortunately the trailblazers never reap the full benefits of. That's just the way it goes. But we kicked in that door. We bet on ourselves and kicked in that door. And Dwayne did the same thing. And we supported him in that, to the point where through every iteration of what the Pensole Footwear Design Academy is and every partnership, we were there, and seeing everything that has been accomplished and over 700 employees who now work in the industry and all of the designers of various degrees of experience who we mentor and still connect with and talk to. You're right. It was at the BFF like a reunion of sorts to see people who, you've had a lot of conversations with, you've invested and poured into as the future professionals, even people through social media who you've never met before, you get to meet for the first time. Um, and then there's the professionals in the industry, the movers and the shakers, and the people who we work with on a professional level who, thanks to COVID, we haven't seen in person for 2 to 2.5 years or more. And to have us all together in that space and talk about the issues, solve problems, leave gems, collectively wrap our arms around the next generation of future professionals and say, for this weekend, we got us all here for you to breathe, be comfortable, and saying what your frustrations are, sharing your fears, allowing the people who are experiencing the industry to have those same fears shared and say, this is how I overcame it, and everybody left, and I can't speak, for people personally, but collectively speaking, the mission was for people to leave empowered to go back to their spaces and do something if you're not doing anything. And if you are doing something, do more. So it really turned out to be, and as Matt, jokingly stated, there were a lot of things that were said that were just worthy of those thunderous applause. But, in being captivated in the moment of hearing people drop these gems, sometimes people need to be reminded, like, yes, that one is one we should all be really responding to. That nugget right there, and it was just a great opportunity for people to feel like they belong and they're in the right place because as people of color and even women in these industries, we often end up sitting in spaces where we feel like, well, we're the only one here. Or, sometimes imposter syndrome kicks in and people wonder, should they be there? And this was a reassuring BFF for people to know you do belong, you should be there, and you should be comfortable to be who you are and do the things that you want to do.
Yeah, I love that. Imposter syndrome be damned, right? I mean, it was an amazing weekend, and we've been working on the Black Footwear Forum now for 3 years, and it's almost like we're just getting started
Yeah.
because there's a lot of ground to cover, but we are doing it, and the energy is, it's like riding a wave, Sean. It's like we're building this crescendo, and then
Mm-hmm.
we just kind of ride this wave as we build out the regional chapters in New York and Boston, Atlanta, Columbus, Portland. We do the national event continuously and figure out what the next steps are. And so it's been such a joy and honor. It's one of the things when I retire, I'll be most proud of is this event and this movement that we've helped build at FDRA in partnership with Pensole.
Absolutely.
And you brought it. I did joke, but it was so necessary to have that one person kind of leading the audience reaction And you did, man. I don't know. Your hands are probably super sore after that, but you were clapping like a champ, I have to say.
No, I'm used to that in just being a show producer and podcast host and really, Matt, I did work for MTV for 8 years, just about. And you learn a lot when you work for a company like that and being on the set live at Video Music Awards and TRL and all these different places where these are the things that certain levels of education really can't teach you. You got to be in the moments.
Right.
And
Right.
in situations like the one we were in the BFF, it was just easy to naturally know where to get people to respond and move people to where to be. And you know we got our money's worth in terms of moving around and being able to make sure that people were in the right spaces and everybody was able to have their moment. You running around with the microphones, the Q&A, making sure people got their voices heard and their questions off, like all those little things matter
Yeah.
as part of the overall experience. So again, kudos to you too for a great job with that kind of stuff, because if people are in a space like that and they don't feel like their voice is being heard, then it's not quite the captivating and life-changing experience they think it should be. So the fact that you guys were able to hit as many folks as possible and let them get their questions and get those personal nuggets back to them, that was great. And thank
I'm
you for that.
obsessive. I will say when I'm in an event, because we do a lot of events, I'm just like, so what? We don't have a mic. Someone's asking a question. We're live streaming this, and no, people won't be able to hear it. So I do, to borrow your term on your amazing podcast, I do get obsessive about making sure that the people who attend have the event that they deserve. The Black community deserves a top-notch event to talk about the future, their fears, as you said, grievances, concerns, but also strategies and plans and connectivity. And so I didn't want it to be like a second tier event. I wanted it to be, very robust and engaging and to serve as best as we could so that people walked away with feelings. I do want to kind of pivot back to OSD though, because starting that in 2007, it's interesting. We have this podcast. We've been doing it for 6 years. We're basically 6.5 years. We're standing on your shoulders essentially, because we came to this point. It was like, does a trade association do podcasts? What on earth? How can we talk about trade policy and sourcing of footwear and materials development for one episode, much less 350 or wherever we're at now? So I want to say thank you publicly for blazing that trail for podcasts like ours to come along and fill a hole that's separate from OSD, but also critically important, because shoes don't just magically appear at Foot Locker down the street. There's a lot that goes into designing, developing, selling, marketing, sourcing, distributing those shoes. And so I just want to say thank you for what you did. You proved that you could take this new emerging medium in '07 and that you could use it to really educate a lot of people on a lot of different things. And so kudos to you, to Dee and the team, because it's been instrumental to our industry as well.
Thank you. And you guys represent really the evolution of what OSD started. So you guys are actually still right on that trail. You've widened the trail actually, because when we started the talk show in '07, it was because we were inspired by the frustration we had as sneaker lovers behind Nike's 25th anniversary release of the Air Force Ones. Our original logo for OSD was based on the treads on the bottom of the Nike Air Force One, because that's what inspired us to finally be like, we need to really start voicing our concerns about this industry. So if you look at what all the sneaker blogs looked like in '07 and prior, everything was covering Nike and Jordan. And we took a stand on being able to not idolize them in that space and point out their problems and share our concerns and give a voice to the voiceless in terms of the frustration. So we ended up talking about tech, endorsements, lawsuits, talking to designers like Dwayne and Jason Maiden and Wilson Smith, talking to actors and athletes and folks, and getting this renewed perspective because of the access to people we had that others at other spaces didn't have. Or if they did have the access, it was really in a written word. It was no verbalized or personalized take on their experience as sneaker lovers. So that's really the birth of social studies. Our content from the OSD talk show, Dwayne was one of the folks who hit us and said, you guys are really teaching. And other people were like, there's people sitting at Nike and Adidas who are listening to your show every Wednesday and learning how to do their job. So you guys really need to capitalize on this as consultants. And, Dwayne gave us the name for social studies. He came up with that name for our program. We didn't know what we were going to call it, but he was on a tear for a while with naming everything starting with soul. And back during that time, he said, call it social studies, capitalize the SOLE. I was like, done. That's the name of our program. And Dee and I just ran with it to, here we are, 11 years later, it's still going strong. It still catches people when we say it and they're like, oh, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
So you guys are the evolution. You guys are the modern day times for what the OSD podcast was when we started. So we have to thank you because, you said you're at 350 plus episodes. We did a soft retirement at 365 because our goal was to give people a new show every day for a year. And I say soft retirement because we still come back every now and then and do special episodes like we did at the BFF in Portland, where we spoke to Wilson and Scoop. And, we get requests to come back and do things every now and then. But we have some new things on the horizon that we're working on. In particular, we have a podcast coming soon called Critical Lace Theory.
I like it. Oh, man.
Thank you. So
that is super clever.
Yeah, that hotbed topic, we've now turned it into a play on, sneakers and the sneaker experience. So we're working on that now. And, really just as engagement manager for Pensole Lewis College, making sure that the mission is achieved on making sure that we have genuine relationships and partnership and awareness, not just around the country, but around the world. So my job really has a U.S. focus, but there's relationships I'm still building with design organizations and schools around the world.
That's great. You gave us a little sneak peek on what's to come. I was about to ask that question, but you just shared a little bit about this. But I love it, and I love all the work that you do. And thank you for recognizing what FDRA is doing to stay current and look to the future. We work really hard on that. I'm also an engagement manager, just like you, with a media background and all of that stuff. So, I'm kind of listening to you and writing some notes. I like what you said about, I read something about the fact that you said we're planting seeds and building bridges. And I love that. I'm going to take that to heart too, and use that in my own work and make sure that, everything that FDRA is doing is loud and heard and appreciated. So I appreciate your partnership. I appreciate you coming on the show. I think it was really, really fun to hear your stories and get to know you a little bit better. So hope everyone enjoyed that. Matt, do you want to share anything? Did I miss anything?
No, I think you nailed it, Sean. I want to thank you for coming on. I want to thank you for your friendship. You are an encourager and you have a lot of energy, and you're a good dad. You're doing pickup one day and just stuff that I'm dealing with during the COVID era. And so I just want to say publicly, I want to thank you for the man that you are and for partnering with us. And like I said, we're just getting started, my friend.
Thank you. And I'm here in the fight, and I'm here to support you guys however, whenever, wherever. And a text, phone call, whatever away.
That's right. Well, folks, this has been another exciting edition of Shoe and Show, built on the shoulders of OSD, I should say, as we close out. Sean Williams is a prince of a man who's working every day to ensure that the industry has a loud voice, that Black employees in our industry are empowered, are welcome, and that we bury forever this imposter syndrome. Like, that's crap. We got to do away with that. We need to be welcoming to everybody. And we're doing that one step at a time. Join us. Go to blackfootwearforum.com to see what we're up to. If that's of interest to you, hit up shoeandshow.com if you want to dive into this episode or many other episodes in our catalog. And if you want to be on the show, hit us a note, info@fdra.org, and we will consider your candidacy as a guest on our show. But with that, once again, I want to thank Sean, the entire Pensole team, Dr. Dwayne Edwards, the whole crew, for their friendship and their partnership. And until next time, Shoe and Show is out.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion. helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org